things that you're saying why you can be in this area, and then you go and have a meeting with the zoning commission and they say yay or nay that you can go in this area. This is called a special exception. But after we go through the process, we do, and just talked about the site analysis, and then we do something that a lot of people don't like us to, but it's really important that you do. If you're going into an existing building, have your architect do an as-built of the building. I do not care if it was just recently built. Have an as-built done. Because 9 times out of 10, something's wrong. Something was not built the way the plans or the CAD plan. Oh, I get a CAD. I can't tell you how many times I get CAD plans from some other firm, and their CAD plans were right. It's just when they got out on site, they couldn't do certain things, and they had to make a change. And unfortunately, we don't go back and fix all that when we get to drawing, after the project's done. We don't go back and start, well, that came out 6 inches. 6 inches makes a big difference in the world of construction. It may not, you may be like, man, 6 inches is about right there, that's not a big deal.
We had a client that called us, exact thing happened, and as-built wasn't done. And they went off of some very old drawings. There was a column in the CEO's office. Not just in the office, but like in the center of the office. I mean, just totally ruined the entire office. And then I got the phone call and they said, can you come fix this? And I said, well, we're gonna start with an as-built. And then we had to completely redo the project for them and readjust and tear down brand new walls. Because they just, and you would think a column is one of the very obvious.
It is because sometimes you can get a CAD drawing from somebody else, and that column was where it was supposed to be, but in the field, when they started building it and measured out, it got pushed someplace else. And it's just, that's the nature of the game. So if you're gonna do leasing, and if it's a brand new building, get an as-built, field measure, have them field verify what's going on. Now, sometimes, if you're leasing for somebody, they won't do it, because they don't want to pay for it. So they'll say, well, you can pay for it if you want to, but those are the things that you have to be able to put in your budget if that happens. But as-builts are very critical. Even when you build a building, if you can't get a survey of the land, you need to have one done. You've got to have a survey of that land done. Because the civil engineer is going to be like, some civil engineers have surveying in the house, some of them go to another person that's all they do is survey. But what that does is that helps them find your power lines, your drains, everything that has to do with their property, they can figure that out, how it slopes and everything. If you have a retention pond, if there's retention, if water, all that stuff can be handled in that front part. And then so with that, we do the visioning, and then we also, during our research process, we talk about the big elephant in the room. What is your budget? How much do you want to spend on this? What do you think is going to cost you? We are not contractors. We will give you a industry standard per square footage number. But if you start coming out with, I want this particular LED light that is $2,000 per fixture, that's not industry standard anymore. So one of the things that I've worked both ways. I've worked design build, I've worked just design, and so when you building a building, the first thing I would tell you to do, try to find, went back too far. Find you what they call, even if you don't want to use that contractor or somebody as your general contractor, find a CM, a contract manager. They will help during the design process to keep the budget in rein. They will keep the architect from putting that 3-form resin panel into your project that is $900 per square foot. It looks good, and when you see it, you'll be like, oh God, I gotta have that. And then when you find out the price, oh God, take it out. So it helps to, and that helps to talk all that stuff through, but also what helps is, while we're in this research process, we're beginning our conceptual design. We're beginning to lay things out. We're beginning to block things out. We're beginning to think about what you said and different materials that can go into this building. What helps us to make decisions on materials is that budget, is the budget analysis and what you're looking for. Because we like 3-form, we love 3-form, but there are some other products that are a little cheaper than 3-form. So we will go out and try to find that product that will give you that look, but will be cheaper. Even if I have to go out, because I had a project over at Leadership Square where I was going to use Mo's design. And I know that stuff's very expensive, but I went to we went to a prefabricator. I found one, and they made the same exact thing, not for half, but for 75% less than what Mo's was going to produce it.
Regal?
I can't remember the name. But they made it 75% less. Same exact design. So that's one of the things that we, as an architect, as an interior designer, that we try to do is find the same thing. But find it, if I can get it locally made, it's better for you. And that money that was budgeted for that can go somewhere else now and help you do different things. So we go through the research and we do a zoning review. And that is very, I want to tell you, office buildings are not as hard, but if you're dealing with industrial, you better be able to tell that person that building can go in that zoning area. Because if not, you're going to be in a world of trouble. Because being with some, reason I say that, I do a lot of industrial buildings in Tulsa, a whole lot of them. And those are the first things we have to look at. Can this manufacturing plant go in this area? What is it zoned as? Is it an S1? Is it, sometimes we sit there and like, yeah, you can go here, but you have some special exceptions. Are you ready to go before the board and tell them why you want to be in this building? And I had to go back to the original architect and have them reclassify their building because they built it the wrong way. There's a difference, and everybody say, well, it's a storage building. Everybody, when you see a warehouse, you think it's just what? A big warehouse for storage. And no matter what you put in, it's storage. That's not the way it works. There's 2 different kinds of storages, almost 3. And if you put a certain one in there, you take them out of your zone. So we go through that process. We do a 3D massing, which helps. This is one of our just simple playing around saying where can what go. This is Bixby, elementary intermediate. Massing, nothing particular, just massing it out. Then we get down to the details of space planning, putting things in there. And this is one of the things that always comes up. What if I add this to this? What will it cost my project? So we do a bid alternate. And they can, for the contractors, give us an alternate bid, a separate line item. Now this is the pretty stuff that everybody likes to see. The 3D design, oh, I love it, I just love going in there. try to get back to that, but sometimes materials make you do certain other things, but this is our last part of the decision making before we go into construction documents. We want to make sure you know what it's going to look like. And we're getting to the point where ground up buildings, we're going to start putting 3Ds into our drawing contracts so that the contractor can see the vision as well, because that helps. So now you get to the technical phase. This is the part nobody likes, except for the contractors and us. We get to determine, now we're down to the part where we're getting your construction documents together. We're putting it together, MEPs, structural drawings, finishes, everything that we talked about are now getting put on a document so that we can now go to what is called bidding and permitting, which can happen simultaneously. Even though some things may change in between, if it's not really life safety for interior remodels, if it's not life safety, we don't have to send it back really. But in full-fledged, if we're doing full big changes, we got to send it back. But 90% of the time, changes are like, I want a different carpet. Oh, I want a different interior. And so we're able to just change and come back. So we get to the construction site, and now we have drone, so we do drone inspections also, and site visits by drone. So we get to see the beginning, and our civil engineer gets really excited by dirt work. I don't know why.
So do we.
She loves to see the dirt work.
I ran out of equipment on the same.
And then we start going full-fledged construction. I was on the site not too long ago out there. And when we had all those torrential rains, and this is where we have to work with the contractor because the rain caused havoc with this project.
Yeah.
Because it flooded half of the building. And so we had to work with them and this is also, when we go out there, there's changes. And we have to work with them to get changes done. Oh, I went too far. But that's our end. This is a point you like to see. Mona Lisa's not finished. It's almost finished. The skin is almost on. But when these pictures were taken, we were still in the midst.
Thanks,
What
Edward.
was
You guys
the
have questions?
budget figure for that project?
For this one, oh, I don't know this one, because this one was a school bond. And so it was a part of 3 or 4 elementaries and schools put together. That one was a few million. Because it was
I'm sure it was more like 10 to 15.
yeah. I think Bixby has a bond issue where it's like 20, 30 per school that they're putting out.
It's a pretty big one.
Any other questions? All right, I will wrap this up pretty quick. I'm Dina Ramadan, co-founder and CEO of DBG Construction. So a little bit about us. Our higher purpose is to contribute to the world by providing an experience that's delightful, not only to the client, but also to the community. It's very important to us. We know that our buildings are going to be around for a long time, and the people interfacing with them, we always want it from the point of during the construction process to not wreak havoc on that area of town that the construction's going on, but for the long run. Our mission is to bring teams together to build faster and better than any other GC. Today, I'm going to review the 4 major kinds of construction methods. Everett touched on one, which is construction management. So I'm going to go through the pros and cons of pre-construction, design build, negotiated bid, and construction management. So there's always a time and place for each one of them. So design bid build is your typical hard bid, is what you hear. And you see this a lot in public contracts. So the pros is you're going to have the lowest possible price. And construction documents and specs are 100% complete prior to bid. So this ensures that it's apples to apples bidding. Some of the cons that come out of it is the low cost on the front end may result in change orders. There is the incentive to be competitive may result in items being left out. The joke in the public world with your city, state, and federal government, when bids happen at 10 and 2, and when you walk out of the bid room, the first question that's asked by the person, if it's me, so the first question I would have asked if ever one low bid was, what'd you miss? That's the biggest joke, is the minute you found out that you're low bid, you call your estimator and say, we're off by $100,000, what'd you leave out? And I mean, we can tell you dozens of stories, especially on public projects, your really large ones, we always know, and down to the point, there was, it was down at the river, and literally a zero was left out. So instead of it saying 500,000, it was 50,000 on one of the ad alternates. So that GC, it was a $30 million project, but still $450,000 on a $30 million project is a big chunk of change. And so it's just a difficult way to start a project because inadvertently the GC is going to try to make up that money. So competitive bidding process limits the general contractor's ability to navigate design to construction discrepancies, and it doesn't allow for value engineering. So some of the other methods in the private world allow for this synonymous back and forth discussion with the architect and engineers to help for value engineering. And as you can see from the diagram, the owner hires the architect, and then the owner hires the general contractor. There's several general contractors bidding to the subs. So this was a project that we did in downtown Oklahoma City that was a design bid build. And what was interesting about this project is after it went out to bid, they came back to us and said, we still gotta cut out a couple $100,000. So this actually was a design bid build, and then I layered on negotiated bid. There's always money to cut. This was an interesting one. When we submit a schedule of values, the client, when they entered in the budget, he actually left out a zero on our demo. So our demo price was $50,000, we had an existing building, and he called us and said, I only put $5,000 into the system, can we shave off $45,000? And so it wasn't even us that messed it up on the schedule of values, it was the gentleman on the bank side, so that was stressful, to say the least. Construction management. So this is professional service that specialized project management techniques to oversee the planning, design, and construction of a project from beginning to end. This is the one that Everett had mentioned. So you see here, the owner hires the the architect, and then they also hire a general contractor. The competition and bidding happens on the subcontractor level. So this way is where you pick your general contractor up front at the same time that you're picking your architect and involving them throughout the process. So this saves money for projects that are technical and complexity and multi-phase. We're working on a project right now where it's a medical center and it's 20,000 square feet. So we're having to phase and do construction on one end, move people into the offices, and then start again. So that multi-phase has to be planned out during construction documents. So when they're doing the technical drawings, they can say, do this first, move people here, demo here, and how does that work? Because people are utilizing building at the same time. So we have dust control, we have access ways, we have to make sure life safety is still being adhered to. Can't be cutting off an exit pathway just so you can remodel that half of the building. So it's really important for us to be working hand in hand with the architect on those type of issues. It reduces risk, so you're able to have a guaranteed maximum price and ceiling cost for the client, just effectively managing that. So we can come back and we like to do 30, 60, and 90%. We start pricing out. So 30% we're working with the architect and saying, well, maybe we should consider an alternate. Maybe we shouldn't do steel. Maybe we should look at potentially metal building, or even some of these retail centers could even be done in wood frame with a truss system. That's really important because that's a big cost savings. So we recently worked on some retail centers that were in this situation. The client came to us up front before they even had architecturals done. And they said, okay, just very basic, here's the floor plan. What would you price this building at? And they came to us as wood frame. Well, the owner, their representative, had gone on pregnancy leave, was gone for a few months, so another gentleman stepped in who was overseeing the architect. He approved for it to be a steel building. So when they came back to us and they went out to bid, I get the phone call, why are you $250,000 higher than your original bid? And in my email, which is about this long, we detailed out all the changes from our first, so we said, here's our initial bid, and we told you, it's wood frame, it's truss, da-da-da-da. Well, now you've moved to steel, the building's a little bit taller than it initially was, so there's your $250,000. And because they had already a tenant in there, Dunkin' Donuts had to be moved in by October, this was March, we had less than 5 months to get it built, because the permit still hadn't come out. They call us and say, cut $250,000 out. We said, sure, we just need a couple months, because your architect has to redraw, we have to re-permit. And they said, oh, okay, no, we're not gonna do that. So now they lost out on that potential savings. In this situation, construction management, we would have prevented that. Because we would have been talking to the architect and taken out that situation where somebody from a different region came in to manage somebody else's project. So the cons, management contracting arrangements is that significant portions of the total service to which the construction manager is remunerated are not subject to competitive bidding. So in this situation, the competitive bidding is happening on the subcontractor base. And where you are able to take care of that issue on the general contracting side is conducting interviews with your architect. And at that point, you are talking to your general contractors about what their fee. And typically those management fees is how you're able to keep that competitive. This was a project in Dallas that we did, IBC Bank. This was a major remodel, 10,000 square feet, and it was a mid-rise. So we had to deal with the dust issues and controlling that. We actually had to tear up all this tile. This was that project I mentioned to you. There was granite tile there, and we spent 2 weekends removing in pieces. We had to remove and lay new tile. That way the rest of the mid-rise could still stay open. Dust control was a big issue here. But what was great about this is when we got the plans, it was about 8 pages. They were probably around 30 to 40%. We were able to give them a budget, and then we finished out the process with the client. We were then able to even start demo and construction. So we did an accelerated permit process in Dallas. It cost the client a couple $1,000s, but it worked out for them because we did this remodel in 4 months, and we had them open by September. We were able to start the project even before all the finishes and everything were detailed out. And we were just still doing bid packages simultaneously, so it's a faster delivery method. Negotiated bid is the client hires the architect again, hires the general contractor separately, and then competition happens on the subcontractor level. This is when a price for services rendered with a single contractor in the method, general contractors do not compete. So this is where you come in and say, we know what our prototype is, we know what the finishes are gonna be, this is our budget. So this is a standard for building type material, all the materials and finishes are set. So this is where you have multiple. So I'll show you an example of Zaxby's. And so in this sense, Zaxby's, they've done this 6 times across the United States. So they're just stamping these projects out. They know basically where they need to be. So they call us and say, this is where we need to be, help us price it out for your market, get us in there. We worked with them and we had to change a couple of items to get them in their budget from when they had built somewhere else. But that's where negotiated bidding comes in, is where there's multiple and you know the issues that you're gonna be running into. And then lastly, design build. So this method is where design and construction services are contracted by a single entity known as a design builder contractor. This is where it changes, where the owner hires the general contractor hires the architect and design team, and then it's bid out to the subcontractors. So flexible and accommodating for a tight budget, it's more streamlined process and presents a personalized experience for the client. You capitalize on innovation and expertise with the suppliers and specialty contractors. So for us, we'll get 30% drawings from the architect, and we bring in the subs into the room, and we start reviewing those plans at 30, 50, and 90%. So we are bringing the experts to the field from the architectural design, MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, as well as the mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractors to help us stay inside of that budget. A little bit faster construction process. Again, we're able to start the construction process. Submit permits, we're potentially able to start moving dirt prior to the bid or the permit coming out. So with design build and construction management negotiated bid, the largest con is the way it comes down to your general contractor and making sure you validated them. Too often, Hillary had mentioned residential builders. The state of Oklahoma doesn't have a requirement. There's no licensing for general contractors. There's licensing for architects and engineers and designers. There's no licensing for general contractors. So a home builder can come in and build a commercial building. And that's where they may not be aware of like a G702, 703, which is a pay application issued by the American Institute of Architects. That's standard in the commercial industry. The banker loves it because you have a schedule of values, full transparency. It's very important in our industry. With a home builder, they're used to just saying, okay, well, we have this money and we'll just bill you along the way, we'll just figure it out. And that's where you end up going over budget. So it's really important in these methods that you've interviewed your general contractor and are confident in their capabilities. So this is a local project here on the Sheridan that we did was design build, and we worked with the materials and finishes. This building was a 90-year-old building, and it's turned out to be an incredible project, more than we'd ever thought. It's become a public space. They have events and parties there on a weekly basis today, which was not something we had factored in, but it's been a really rewarding project. So in conclusion, no matter which of the project delivery methods you choose for your next project, remember it's the strength and weaknesses in the individuals working. So getting that dream team together, that dream team will have more of an impact on the manner in which you organize your contracts. So although both are very important. So it's important to do your research up front. It saves money on the back end. Henry Ford said it best, if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. So appreciate everyone's time. I hope this was educational for you, and if you have any questions, let us know.
I have one thing.
Yeah.
You said something about residential contractors doing commercial buildings.
Yes.
The biggest issue with that for us is they don't have a relationship with the city and those inspectors, and two, they don't know the codes as far as commercial.
And their subcontractor base doesn't know it. So what happens is, I watched a project that a home builder did. It was wood frame, multi-story, and they used a residential electrician, and they had to come out and tear everything out and redo it. So that cost went back to the client, which then ends up back in the baker's lap. And then the baker has to have that very difficult, hard conversation to say, well, and the other side of it is speed. So with the commercial world, the commercial contractors, we make sure the size of project that we have vetted that our electrician has the breadth of the team. So a very small TI, you can have an electrician that has one journeyman and just a couple, a foreman and a couple of journeymen. So that may work. But on a larger project, we have to make sure that we have at least 8 to 10 workers on the site from the electrical side and the mechanical side, or it draws it out and that client is paying interest, and that interest can start to just eat into their budget, because they say, well, I only plan to be on this project for 9 months. Potentially 15 months later, we're still on this project. I didn't account to pay for interest for this long. I didn't account to pay for 2 lease payments, right? So that you have to factor that in and be conscious of the client that they're still operating their business, they're still paying rent somewhere else, and they're still paying on that loan interest, depending on how that works out. So because on a construction loan, you're not paying principal, but you are paying interest. And it's just like with budgets, everyone has to budget for that. So it's really important that you vet your contractor, and the timing of the project is essential. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's really key. We've been pushing. I wish the state of Oklahoma would. There's nothing wrong with home builders. They have their time and place, but it's almost like going to a doctor. You don't want your family medicine doctor performing heart surgery on you. I don't, at least. You don't want your bookkeeper running your financial statements and your taxes. Right, the bookkeeper has their place. They're running the books, but you still have to have that CPA that's validating your books at the end of the month and looking at your taxes, and you have a proper tax planning. So too often, I believe that gets skipped over in that a builder is a builder is a builder, and so there needs to be that distinguishment. Any questions?
I want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming and spending
Well,
your morning with us.
amazing.
I've enjoyed meeting everybody.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we do this, we'll do this in January, and so if you guys know anybody that's interested, please refer them out. All
Yeah.
right, thank you. Larry, thank you for your time. I do, did you ask me to show you our packet?
You have a card by chance?
So we do these
I'd like one of
communication
them.
packages that you see the client throughout the project, so give us a few minutes, I'll run that by you. Okay, you gotta get to.
I'm gonna be late.
Okay,
So you mentioned.
I'm sorry. Well, I'll set up a time.
But you're not at Tulsa.
Is there another time, maybe next week or this week? Yeah. Should I schedule one?
What the address is?
This is Hillary, do you have to meet her in maybe first?
So if the building's already built,
Yes. What happens is, they say this one right here, they say Dee was on the lease it out. And she had drawings, but they changed the.
Yeah, do you know Hillary?
So we would send our team out, and they would come in here and field measure this whole building, this whole space, they would field measure and figure out what's here. Okay, all the walls, the walls,
This is my cell phone on here, Larry. If you give me a call, we'll set up a time to go through that packet.
they take the original plans plus the.
We're starting in September. Director of contract
A lot of times,
management,
in our
or the federal
division,
contract.
we work with a lot of buildings.
It's such a great,
And their plans are really old.
organization.
It is.
We don't even take plans, they'll come out. We don't have plans.
Great purpose.
Right.
Okay, well,
I did some network and I.
Larry Woods, Hillary Blaney.
Fall in the right place.
Hi, good life is so
Yeah.
nice.
Actually,
She's a
I was
good
one for the Wilson School as well, at large.
The good.
I still want to finish it.
You were gonna be
If I again, for the quarter.
And I really like that she wants women to know about this.
It's something I want to do, all that kind, but you got open, I told him, I was like, well,
She's
she's looking,
you know.
okay, well, you need a schedule.
Right.
And then, because I was part-time,
Oh,
and I was.
that's a good idea. Thank you so much.